Hello, it's Book Quote Wednesday and the word is dry. Today I am reading from my space opera novel The Xenocide Mission. My heroes, the human Joel and the Rustie Boon Round, have escaped the Xenocides only to take two accidentally with them. And now they are all four being forced to land their damaged ship on the world that the Xenocides eradicated, hence the name by which the humans know them. So hashtag awkward. The lifeboat extended its landing feet and touched down along one side of a wide open plaza. Joel powered down the engines and, almost as a ritual gesture to show that they had indeed arrived, cut the internal arc grav. He immediately felt lighter, springier, and he bounced up and down a couple of times on the balls of his feet to get the feel of it. Then he looked morosely through the viewports at what lay outside. It was dark as dusk on a dark, overcast day. 2- and 3-story buildings, the height of the lifeboat and more, surrounded the square. The stone was black and uninviting, the doors and windows were low and wide. Dust and debris gusted about the square in the wind, but no snow. It was cold, but dry, though stains on the buildings and channels through the dirt suggested that water occasionally flowed here. Maybe snow did fall, but got melted by warm volcanic breezes. The architecture was solid and lumpish, nothing crude, but nothing soaring and elegant either. This world was poor in metals, and it was the opinion of Commonwealth experts that its inhabitants would never have reached a higher level of technology. But they had still made it to a pretty advanced Stone Age, like the pre-Columbian peoples of South America, and what little they had been taken from them. I said the power and command flows have all redirected, said Boon Round. Joel jumped. Sorry, I was miles away. I've been aft and inspected the damage, Boon Round said slowly, as if to someone of feeble intellect. Remember where the satellite hit us? We'll have to make repairs, and I recommend an internal inspection. I recommend an external inspection, obviously. Good idea. Joel didn't mention that Boon Round had been the one counselling against landing in the first place. He glanced outside and winced. It looked cold. More to the point, he called up the external environment display. Well, we can breathe the air, radiation, we get a dose of 150, 160 millisieverts if we stayed out for a day, which of course we won't. That's higher than the recommended dose. We could wear our spacesuits for protection. Pretty cumbersome though. Don't worry, both our bodies can take the dose. We'll take a couple of anti-rads before we go out and never notice the difference. Joel looked at the XCs. I don't know what their tolerance is though. You're not going to take them outside, Boon Round exclaimed. Well, I'm not going to leave them in here while we go out, am I? We can at least agree on that. Boon Round glanced at the airlock. I'm not sure I want to go in there with them. You and me both, Joel muttered. Get your calibrator ready. And so Joel pulled on a weather suit, and he and Boon Round swallowed a pair of anti-rads dispensed at the touch of a button from the medivac. Then, each armed only with instruments for fine-tuning an optical fibre network that they had to pretend were guns, Joel opened the inner hatch. The XCs looked up at them, but obediently moved back to let the two of them in when Joel gestured. Joel shut the inner hatch and opened the outer. He sneezed as the air of the dead world flooded into his nostrils and sinuses. It was bitterly cold, with a burnt, acrid quality that only lingered in his senses for a moment before the temperature anaesthetised his sense of smell. He tried not to think of all those decaying nuclei that were now entering his lungs and beaming their disrupting signals directly into his DNA. He quickly pulled his weathersuit hood up over his head, so that now just his eyes were exposed to the stinging cold. Because he was nearest the outside, he swung the ladder attachment out and released the catch that let it unfold. Then he climbed slowly down and became the first human to stand on the dead world. Apart from the ticking of the lifeboat's cooling hull and the moan of the wind, it was completely quiet. He was on a world where not another living being breathed or moved. He shivered with more than just the cold. It was an experience others could keep. He looked across the plaza at the empty buildings opposite. They were decayed and crumbling, and the empty holes that were the doors and windows in the bleak stone filled him with absolutely no desire to explore their dead secrets. Boon Round and the XEs climbed down after him. The two unwanted passengers huddled close together, chirping quietly, and again Joel wondered what was going through their minds. Was it, "Damn, they caught us out," or "My God, I had no idea"? Joel had seen 200-year-old archive film taken at the end of Earth's Second World War. In some areas, the Allied forces that had conquered Germany had rounded up the civilian populations and forced them to walk through the Nazi death camps to see at first hand what their late leaders had done. On the faces of some had been shame, some hardened resolve, it was no news to them at all, and some sheer unwilling disbelief. He wondered what he would see here if he could read XE expressions. "The damage is this way," Boon Round said. A dark outline in the ground around them showed where the lifeboat's fields were still on, intersecting with the ground. "Field off," Joel said into his aid, and they walked down to the stern of the lifeboat. Joel squinted up at the cracked hole in the hull, the charred scars of the blast. "I'll need to stand on your back to get a look at it," he said. "Why should I have to carry you?" Joel sighed. "Because you're stronger than me. Rusties are stronger than humans." "I have lost count of the number of times you have used that term. You must know I prefer first breed." "I am sorry, the first breed are stronger than humans, and I, in my weaker natural state, must rely upon your superior physical prowess to get me up there to inspect the damage. Oh, wonderfully strong and ever so slightly touchy one." "I accept your reasoning," Boon Round said. "There's no need to over-elaborate upon your initial argument." It reared up to place its forefeet against the hull. "Climb up my back and stand on my shoulders." Joel scrambled up. He knelt on Boon Round's shoulders, braced his hands on the hull, and slowly stood upright. The damaged section wavered in front of his eyes. "It's clean," he said. "Nothing's going to short-circuit. We can tie off. Your right foot is too near my eye. Please move it." Joel growled to himself and shifted his right foot an inch. "That hurt. You're scraping the skin off my shoulder. Can't you lift your feet?" Joel tried to imagine balancing single-footed on the shoulders of a wobbling Rusty. "No," he said. "Keep quiet, I'm trying to concentrate." The damaged node that had almost compromised the force planes was just above him. He leaned against the hull and stood on tiptoes. "Almost done, Boon Round. One more thing to check out." "You're much heavier than I first thought. I'm probably going to sprain something." "God, you're as bad as—" "Never mind," Joel said. "Hold on just a minute longer." "As bad as what?" Boon Round's voice came from below him. "A toy donkey in some stories my dad used to read me." "What's a donkey?" "An earth animal." Joel peered more closely at the node. "An unintelligent beast of burden," he muttered to himself, and yelled as Boon Round suddenly dropped down to all fours and he fell to the ground. He landed with a blow that drove the breath out of his body. "I heard that remark." Boon Round stood over him. "I've had enough of your constant stream of insults and petty slights against the first breed." Joel wheezed. "My what?" "If you don't like us, then I wonder why you bothered to join the Commonwealth in the first place. The ones who command, whom you were meant to replace, at least treated us with respect." "But I—" Boon Round pushed on. "Ever since we have been incarcerated together, my every reasonable and subjective remark has been met by your sarcasm and lack of concern." "Your every what?" Joel had pushed himself up into a sitting position, and to his surprise found that he wanted to laugh. "And now you compare me to an unintelligent beast of burden?" "Boon Round, I bet that when the ones who command gave an order, you obeyed it and didn't drive them mad with whinging and whining. We were bred to obey them, and that does it. I'll go no further. I'll not help or assist you in any way unless I receive your apology now." said Joel. The urge to laugh was growing ever stronger. "That does not translate. Was it another insult? And don't give me the line about insults between friends being acceptable, because I've heard it before, and we are emphatically not friends. Well?" Joel sucked in his cheeks and bit on them to keep the smile off his face. "I apologise, Boon Round. I'm sorry I compared you to a donkey." Then, because he couldn't resist it, "I never meant to impugn your intelligence." Boon Round was silent for a moment. "Your apology is accepted. Let's finish our work. Get out of here. Let's finish our work out here and get back inside." "Yeah." Joel climbed back to his feet and took a step forward. "Good idea." Something hit the ground where he had been sitting, and he looked down at it. It looked like a spear. Time seemed to slow down. He was an outside observer watching the scene from afar. It looked like a spear. It was long and thin and had a point at one end, and damn it was a spear. There was no getting around it, but it couldn't be a spear because— "Turn around very slowly," Boon Round said. Joel did, and saw the attackers. There were 5 or 6 of them, approaching slowly from a small alleyway between buildings that opened into the plaza. They were the size of XEs. In fact, superficially, they looked very like XEs, except that they walked on 4 limbs, keeping what would have been an XE's hunting arms free for carrying things, or indeed throwing them. They approached with every sign of caution, perhaps fear. Even with the 4 legs, it wasn't the smooth flowing walk of a Rustie, but more of a scuttle, like a forward-facing crab. Part of Joel's mind was screaming, "My God, someone survived!" The rest was more practical. "Can you get to the airlock quickly?" he said. "I would recommend getting to the airlock slowly," said Boon Round. "We don't want to surprise him." "Yes, we bloody well do. I want to surprise him with how quickly we can get into the airlock and fly away." "We mean them no harm." "Boon Round, we came out of the sky. How do you think they feel about us? Hold on." Joel's hand was moving slowly to the aid at his belt. He could send a command to the lifeboat to throw a defence field around them, and then they would be safe, but it would have to be quick. The nearest local, now only 30 feet away, lifted its spear into a throwing position. Joel dived to one side and the spear flew past him. It hit one of the lifeboat's landing feet with a dull clunk. Joel had his aid in his hand. "Lifeboat systems command, activate!" 2 XCs fell out of the sky in front of him and landed in a crouch, hunting arms extended towards the attackers, claws out. A low rumble, an ominous growl that set Joel's teeth on edge and vibrated in his ribs, came from both of them, and it took a moment to realize it was the same 2 XCs they had brought with them, as if there could be more. The 2 had jumped clear over him and Boon Round to engage the enemy, and engage they did. The big female sprang forward in a blur and flew into the nearest attacker, and they sprawled together on the ground. Her claws dug into its stomach area, and blood spurted as she lifted it up and flung it at another comrade. There was no screech from the creature, no high-pitched trill of agony. It was eerily silent. Meanwhile, the small male had wrested a spear from one of the others with its lower arms, which he reversed and buried in the guts of its former owner, while his hunting arms tore the face off a second. A kick to one knee from the female shattered the leg of another attacker, and it pitched forward into the dirt. Another swipe with those claws severed its neck, while the female was already turning to deal with another. The male had leapt onto someone else and was gnawing at its shoulder, just one bite that almost took its arm off. The one surviving attacker fled. Joel stared at the XCs with a mixture of awe and horror. Their suits were spattered with native blood, and they stood as if all the strength had drained out of them, like 2 exhausted prize fighters. Their shoulders drooped, their hunting arms almost trailed in the dirt. "More are coming," Boon Round said in a matter-of-fact way. Another group was lurking just outside the plaza, crowded into one of the alleyways and peeking out. Joel gazed at them, and his heart flooded with pity. He was getting tired of being the target of unprovoked aggression, but what could he expect? These were the survivors of a nuclear holocaust, possibly the last survivors ever. He couldn't set the XCs onto them, and he didn't want to. "Get back here!" Joel shouted. The female XC looked up, and Joel gestured, pointing at her and then at the ground next to him with abrupt jabs. "Get back!" She understood that much at least, and took the male's elbow to lead him into the shadow of the lifeboat. Joel could see spears and arrows being raised, and he finished the command to his aide that he had begun less than a minute ago. "Activate defence fields now." A spear flew through the air, and another, then a stone, whatever the locals could find to throw. They met the field inches from Joel's face. They stopped dead, and their charred remains fell to the ground with a crack, a flash of light. "Get inside," Joel said quietly. "They won't get through the fields," Boon Round objected. "We can still do repairs." "Think what they've been through, Boon Round. Let's not rub it in. We'll take ourselves away, and that'll be that. You go first." "You want me in the cabin alone with these 2? "Just do it." A still protesting Boon Round climbed back up the ladder, and Joel indicated for the XCs to follow. He climbed up last of all and pulled the ladder attachment up. Then he sealed the outer hatch, opened the inner, and headed for the flight deck. He winced. The gritty feeling was back behind his eyes, stronger than ever. It was so strong that he was looking at the pilot's display through tears, but suddenly the feeling passed again. "Ah!" He jumped. The female XC had come up behind him. They looked at each other. "Look," Joel said, thanks for what you just did. I know you can't understand." He just had time to register that at least the claws were retracted before her club-like hunting hand whistled through the air and smashed into the side of his head. Remember, you can buy my books at www.benjeeps.com. See you next time.